Welcome to part 8 of this biplane tutorial series where we're creating this Boeing-Stearman Model 75. If you haven't seen the previous parts of the tutorial, you can check out the tutorial playlist with the link in the description. So in this part, we're going to be modeling all of the details inside the cockpit. So we're going to be modeling a lot of details in this part. Before we start this part, I want to let you know about a really great Blender add-on for creating micro meshes. With the Simply Micro Mesh add-on, you can quickly and easily create chainmail, chain links, cloth and fabric weaves, scales, and other types of micro meshes. Select the mesh that you want to add the micro mesh to and make it its own object. Then enable the micro mesh on the object using the add-on. There are many different customizable settings to control, like the size of the micro mesh, as well as the rotation and randomize. The add-on also comes with many different micro mesh types that you can set up in Blender's asset browser to easily change the type of micro mesh. You can find my full add-on review video with the link in the description, and if you purchase the add-on through my affiliate link, you'll be helping to support this channel. So let's zoom into the back cockpit, and what we're going to do is model everything in the back cockpit first, and then we'll duplicate it and we'll put it into the front cockpit because they're going to be pretty similar. So let's start by adding a new object, and we're going to create basically like a metal frame. So we're going to add a plane for this. Let's zoom into the plane, and we're going to bring it over here into the center of the back cockpit. And in edit mode, we're going to delete only faces. So now we just have that wireframe. So let's take this plane, we're going to move it into a new collection in the Boeing-Stearman, and we'll rename this to back cockpit. Click on create. So now let's add a modifier to give it thickness. So let's go here to the modifier properties, and we're going to add the skin modifier. We'll go into edit mode, we'll select everything, and we'll use Ctrl A to make the skin modifier a lot smaller. And then we'll add a subdivision surface with 2 levels, and let's click on smooth shading there on the skin modifier. So now back in edit mode, we're gonna scale the frame up a little bit like that, and let's bring the frame down, and let's go inside the cockpit, and then we're gonna scale the frame up, and then also bring the frame down just like that. So now we're going to select everything and we're going to duplicate it and move it up here so that we have another one. Now you can see that some of these objects are kind of getting in the way. So what I'm going to do is select the windows here and hide them, and hide those frames and hide these windows here. Also what we can do is hide the wings. So let's take the wings and disable that collection. Also the wing struts. And then also we can disable the fuel line. And then let's also disable that tube there on that wing, so disable that. So now we have a lot more space and it's easier to kind of move around and see everything. Let's go back in edit mode of the frame object. So let's bring the frame up to about there, and then if we go into wireframe, we can select both of these vertices and fill that. We'll select these 4 or these 2 and fill that. We'll also select these 2 and fill that there, and then also these 2, fill that. So now we have this nice frame. Let's also just select the front of the frame, and I'm going to bring it back just slightly. We can adjust this later if we need to. So now we just have a basic frame around that cockpit. Now what I also want to do is have a diagonal frame coming down here. So in edit mode, we're going to select this and then select this, and we'll duplicate it and move it down. Let's scale it down. Now you can see it doesn't have any thickness. That's because we need to select one of the edges and we need to click on mark root. So now it has a root. So now we can rotate it on the x-axis. We'll bring it over, bring it down, and then if we select the root here, we'll bring it over and bring it down. Just like that, so we have like a pipe on the other side. If we select the entire thing, let's duplicate it and move it over here to the other side, and just stick it right in there. Now I want to create some little panels with some buttons and switches. So let's add a new cube. We're going to scale the cube down, and let's stick it right over here on this side. Go to top view. In edit mode, we're going to scale it down a bit. Let's actually move it forward a little bit like that. And we're going to bring it over here. Let's bring it up, and we want to squish it down a little bit, and we'll bring it right back there. So it's kind of going into the pipe. So it's going to be kind of mounted on that pipe. But make sure it's not going outside of the airplane. Let's now go to the edge select. We'll select this edge, and we're going to add a nice big bevel to that edge, and that's where all the buttons are going to be. And then let's select the bottom face and maybe move the bottom face up a little bit. So let's now add a mirror modifier. So we'll add a mirror, add the mirror modifier, and for the object here, we're going to choose the body. So it's on the other side. Then let's also add a bevel to this object. let's turn the amount up to 3, or the segments to 3. We'll turn the amount way down to 0, and then just drag it up just slightly, zoom in closer to it, and just drag it out by a very small amount. We will shade the object smooth, and then finally, let's add the weight to normal to flatten those flat areas. Now let's drag this cube here into the back cockpit. So let's rename this. I'm going to rename this cube, and we're going to rename this to back panel controls. And then this piece here, we're going to rename this one to back cockpit cage. Let's now go into edit mode of this object, and we're going to select this face, and we're going to duplicate it, scale it down a bit, and we're going to separate it into its own object. And we're going to create another like flat panel here. So we'll extrude this right down, and we'll extrude this all the way down to about there, and maybe move it over a little bit. We can also scale it in a bit like that. So we're going to have this panel kind of mounted there on that frame. We'll select this piece and also bring it up a little bit. And then also we need to recalculate the normals. And this one we are going to rename to back cockpit panel. So now on this panel, we're going to model some levers. So first we need to create a mount for the levers. So we'll go into edit mode, we'll duplicate this object or duplicate the face, and we're going to separate it into its own object. And then let's select this object and we're going to rename it. We're going to rename this to back lever mount. And in edit mode, let's squish it down on the Z axis and then scale it down a bit. And then we can bring it forward and extrude it back like that. And maybe bring the entire thing back just right there onto that panel. And in edit mode, let's add a loop cut and we'll drag the loop cut down. We need to turn off proportional editing and drag it down. Let's scale everything down a little bit. And then if we select the top face, go to the face select the top face, let's scale it up a little bit and bring it down a bit like that. And then we can also add 2 loop cuts here in the center. We can scale the loop cuts up. And then if we go to the face select, let's bring this up just like that. And then if we select everything, let's recalculate the normals. Now I do want this to be a bit more smooth. So what I'm going to do is delete the bevel, and we're going to add a subdivision surface modifier instead and shade that smooth. But now let's add a bunch of loop cuts. So we'll add a loop cut down there to kind of sharpen that up. Let's also sharpen up this edge here. And we'll also sharpen up that edge, and then also sharpen up the top, and we'll add 2 loop cuts to sharpen up the top. Then here over here on the side, let's add some more loop cuts here because I want to cut out some little holes for the levers. So we'll add a loop cut here. Let's scroll out until there are 4 loop cuts and just place that right there. And then we'll add another loop. So we'll add another loop cut right down there. And then on the other side, another loop cut right down there. So let's go to the face select, and we can select all of these faces right here. And we're going to extrude them down on the Z axis. So just bring them down, not too far, just like that. So I'll now add some loop cuts here. We'll drag this loop cut up to sharpen that, and drag a loop cut right up there to sharpen that. And then we'll add some more loop cuts. So we'll add another loop cut there. And then over here on this side, add another loop cut to sharpen that up. So now we're going to have that hole there for the levers. So to model the levers, we'll select everything and we're going to hide everything. We'll center the 3D cursor and let's create the levers by adding a cylinder. And on the cylinder settings, let's turn this to like a 16. We'll zoom into the cylinder here and we'll scale it down so it's kind of like an oval shape. We'll select the top face. We'll go to front view and we're going to bring the lever up. And then we're going to bring it up and start to rotate it over. So bring it up and rotate it, extrude it and rotate it, extrude it and rotate it like that. And then we'll finally just extrude it way out like that. So that's going to be the base of the lever. And then right up here, we'll center the 3D cursor and we're going to add a UV sphere. And we'll scale this up and that's going to be kind of like a little ball there on the top of that lever, kind of to grip it. Now let's rotate that over just like that. And then we'll just shade it smooth. And if we go into edit mode, we'll select the bottom face and delete the faces. So let's now unhide everything. And we're going to scale this object way down. Let's zoom into the object, scale it way down. And we want to move it back here. Let's also rotate it by 180 degrees. And then we're also going to bring it over, scale it down. We're just going to stick it right here. So stick the lever inside the lever mount. And then we can also rotate it on the x-axis and rotate the lever over. Then we'll duplicate the lever, and this lever we're going to have a bit farther down. Now I think both of these levers are a bit too big, so let's scale them down and then move this lever back and bring it up so it's not going to get in the way of the other lever. Also, let's bring both of these levers up again like that. And actually what I want to do is rotate this one over on the x-axis so it's a little bit farther and rotate this one a little bit back. So now I want to add a few different like screws or bolts, just making some simple bolts. So we're just going to add a cylinder. We'll scale the cylinder way down and we're going to rotate the cylinder, rotate it on the Y by 90 degrees. We're also going to add a bevel to this just add a small bevel. Let's turn the segments up to like a 3, and we'll turn the amount to a very small number. And let's scale this way down in edit mode. Let's flatten it a bit, and then we'll drag it over here to this corner, drag it up there along the Z, just like that, and then we're going to shade it smooth. So in edit mode, we're going to duplicate this, put one over here, and duplicate them again, and put another one right down there. Then we'll duplicate this up here, and then duplicate it down there, just so we have a couple more in the middle. Then we're going to select one of them, and we'll duplicate it again, scale this one down so it's smaller, and we're going to put this here in the very front and bring that back. We'll duplicate it over to that corner, and then we'll duplicate 2 more times, so put one in that corner and that corner. Now what I'm going to do is select both of these objects and join them together, and then we'll rename these to back levers. And then for the bolts here, we'll rename this to back cockpit bolts. Now let's go into edit mode of the bolts, and we'll select one of the bolts, and let's move it over here, and let's just stick it on the very front of this piece here. Scale it way down, bring it up, and bring it over like that, and just move it in. And then we'll duplicate it, move it down. We're going to select both of them, and we'll duplicate this and move it over like that. Then we'll duplicate this again, we'll move it over, and we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees. And let's move it over here and stick it in there. Then we'll duplicate both of these again, and we're going to put 2 more over there. And then if we just select one of them, we're going to duplicate this one and bring it up, and duplicate another right there. So let's go into edit mode of this panel, and I'll duplicate the panel. We're going to scale the panel down on the y-axis and just make it a bit more thin, like that. And then I can extrude the panel back. If we select the panel here, we'll recalculate the normals, and then we'll duplicate it and scale it down on the y-axis and make another one, and then duplicate this again and scale this one up a little bit like that, so we have more details. And then if we go back into edit mode of these bolts here, we can use the same bolts just to make a few buttons. So we'll scale this up, bring it in here. We're going to make like some larger buttons. So let's rotate it on the y-axis by about 45 degrees. All right, that's looking good, and bring it down there. Just bring it down in like that. And then we'll duplicate it, bring it up here like that. Just place it right there. We can duplicate it again. And we're just going to make a few different buttons there on the panel. And let's select all these buttons here, and we can duplicate them and put a few more right over here on this side. So now what I want to do is make some basic switches. So we'll select everything, and we're just going to hide everything. We'll center the 3D cursor, and we're just going to add a new cylinder. Let's scale the cylinder down. We can apply the scale, and in edit mode, we're going to squish it down. Let's select the top face, and we'll go to front view, and I can inset this face, and then we can extrude it up, and we'll extrude it and scale it, and extrude it and scale it out, and then we're going to start to scale it back in, just like that. Maybe select this loop here and scale it in a little bit, and then we'll just shade it smooth. Actually, let's use the shade auto smooth. Let's unhide all the other objects, and we're going to use this as like a little dial or switch. Drag it back, and drag it over here to the panel, bring it up, scale it way down, and then we can actually join it into this object. So join it so it's in the same object. So I'll select this here, select this entire piece, bring it in, and we're just going to stick it right in there. And then we just need to rotate it on the y-axis by 45 degrees, negative 45 degrees. So punch negative and enter. And then we're just going to bring it right up there and make it really small. Now to place these switches, I'm going to select both of these objects, and then we'll go into local view. And I'm going to go to front view and go into edit mode. So we're just going to select this piece right here. And in wireframe, we're going to duplicate it, put one down there, and then duplicate another one up here, and just make quite a few more so we have a lot more details. Let's select all of these, and we're going to drag them over a little bit more into the center. And then we'll duplicate these and put some more right over here. Let's also add a few more of those little bolts or screws. So we'll duplicate this. Let's rotate it on the y-axis. We're going to rotate it by 45 degrees. And let's just stick it right into that corner. Duplicate it again, move it forward, and then move it up. Move it over, just stick it right there in that corner as well. And then we'll duplicate this, and we'll put it into this corner as well. Then we'll select this piece, duplicate it, move it over, just rotate it by 90 degrees, bring it down in, bring it over, and we'll go to top view, and we're just going to put 4 of them right here, so that there. Select this one, duplicate it, and we're going to put another 2 right there. So let's go out of local view with the /. Now we also need to add some mirror modifiers. So if we select this object, we need to add a mirror modifier, a mirror, and then on the mirror object, we need to choose the body. So select the eyedropper and choose the body. So it's mirroring over correctly. And then if we select this piece here, I don't want this to be mirrored. So we're going to delete the mirror modifier. Now you can see right over here, this is mirroring over to the other side, but I don't want that to be mirrored. So what we're just going to do is apply the mirror. So click on the drop down and apply it. And then if we go into edit mode, we can just go to top view and we can just select all these pieces we don't need and we'll just delete the vertices. Then also this piece here, we don't want to mirror, so we're going to delete the mirror. So that way this panel here with the lever is only on that side. So now I want to model some smaller pipes which are going all along the cockpits. So we'll center the cursor and we're going to add a cylinder. Let's scale the cylinder way down and apply the scale. Zoom into the cylinder, and in edit mode, we're going to move it over. Let's move it over to this side, and let's bring it forward here so we can see it. And we're going to rotate it by 90 degrees, and let's scale it way down and then make it really long. So make it really small and then really long. And let's shade it auto smooth. Let's go into edit mode, and we're going to duplicate it and move it down here so we have 2 of these small pipes. And we'll scale them down so they're even smaller. And we're going to stick the pipe right down there, bring it back a little bit, and we can just box select the end and bring it back right in there. And then this one here on this side, we'll box select the front, and this side is going to go pretty far all the way over here, basically to the very end. So let's just drag it even farther, and we'll drag it basically all the way to the front. All right, so now let's add a mirror modifier to this object here, and we'll rename this object to cockpit long pipes because it's some really long pipes. So let's now model the front panel. So we'll go here to the front. We're going to center the 3D cursor, and we're going to add a cube. Let's zoom into the cube. We're going to scale it down, squish it down, and we'll bring it forward. And then in edit mode, let's scale it up so it's longer, and we're going to bring it up on the Z-axis. And let's bring it over to this side. We can go to the face select, and we're just going to delete this face. And that way we can add a mirror modifier. We'll turn on clipping, and we're going to merge it with the mirror. And we'll scale it down so it's a little bit more flat. And then let's bring it over and scale it down a bit more flat. And I think in object mode, we need to bring it back a bit. It's a little bit too close, so let's bring it farther back. And now back in edit mode, let's add some loop cuts. So we're going to add a loop cut right there. And we'll go to the edge select, and we're going to bring this edge up here. We'll bring it all the way up there to the top. Then if we select this edge, we can bring this one up to the top as well. We'll add 2 more loop cuts right here, and we'll bring both of these loop cuts up just to round it out and have it be nice and smooth. We'll add 2 more loop cuts there and do the same thing. Now let's go into wireframe, and we're going to select the bottom, and we'll bring the bottom up a little bit so it's not quite that big. So there's a little bit more room there for the pilot's legs. Let's now add a bevel modifier to this object. Let's turn the segments to 3. Turn the amount to 0, and then just drag the amount up so it's pretty subtle, and then we'll just shade it smooth. And then we're also going to add a weight to normal to this object. So now back in edit mode, I'm going to go to the face select, and we're going to select these 4 faces right here, and we're going to extrude those faces out just a little bit. So now right here, we're going to model all the different instruments like the airspeed and the height and rotation and everything. So let's add a new object. We're going to add a cylinder. And on the cylinder settings, let's change this to 32, which is the default. Let's rotate it over. And in edit mode, we're going to scale it down and bring it forward. And let's bring it up here and bring it a bit farther forward. And then let's scale it down on the y-axis to make it really thin. And let's bring it back a bit. And the entire thing should be scaled down a bit more. And let's bring this up like that. Then if we go to the face select and select this face, we'll inset the face. And we can extrude the face back, and then we'll select everything and bring it out a little bit. And then we are going to select all of these 3 here and these 3 here. So just select all those. We're going to duplicate these faces and bring them up and then scale them out a bit, and then we can extrude them back in. Then if we go to the face select, we're going to select all of these faces right here, and we're going to bring the faces down. And let's scale the faces up, and then we'll flatten them on the z-axis by 0. So also select this side, scale it on the x-axis by 0, select this face, scale it along the x-axis by 0. And if we select everything, let's recalculate the normals. Then if I select this entire piece, we'll duplicate it. We're going to rotate it on the y-axis by 180 degrees, and we'll put it down here on the other side. So now let's select this piece here. We're going to duplicate it and bring it down, and let's select the inner loop. So go to the face select the inner loop, and we'll scale it, but we are going to hit Shift Y to exclude the Y-axis and just bring that up. Then if we select this entire piece again, we'll duplicate it. We'll make a smaller one right down there. Now what we're going to do is select the middle one again, and we'll select the entire thing, duplicate it, and move it down. Now let's separate this into its own object. And now that it's its own object, we can add a mirror modifier so it mirrors over to the other side. And then in edit mode, let's bring it in a little bit, and then we can duplicate it and bring it back a little bit, just like that. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different instruments. So let's go back to this object and we'll go into edit mode, and I just want to model like some little screws or things or some little bolts. So we're going to add a cylinder. On the cylinder settings, let's change it to like a 16, and let's scale the cylinder way down, make it really small, and we'll rotate the cylinder by 90 degrees. Now to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to select all of these objects here, so all these panel objects, and we'll go into local view. Now if I go 1 for front view, it's not going to show it. So let's hit Control 1. So we're on the back looking forward. So we'll go back into edit mode, we'll select this entire piece, and we're going to move it up a bit and scale it up. We'll go Control 1 to go to back view and just stick it right there. And if we zoom into it, let's go to the face select this face, and we will extrude it and scale it down, and extrude it and scale it down. And then on both of these pieces here, let's use the shade auto smooth. So now back in edit mode, I'm going to select this entire piece. We'll hit Control 1 for back view, and I'll duplicate it, move it down, select both of them, and we will duplicate it and move it over, and then we'll select all of these again. So select all 4 of these, and we'll duplicate it and put 4 more there. Now let's bring it in a little bit. So deselect these, bring that in a little bit. Then if we select this one again, we'll duplicate it and move it here, and we'll duplicate it and put another one right there. Then we're going to duplicate this one and put it over here, but this one we are going to separate into its own object. And then if we select these 2 objects, we'll join it together, and that way you can see it's now in the other object, so it's going to be added in the mirror because this object has the mirror modifier. Let's bring this right down there. We'll duplicate this, put one down there, and one right over there. We'll duplicate this and put one here, and put one in this corner, and this corner. Let's also select one more, and we'll duplicate this again, and we'll put 2 more in that corner. Select these, duplicate it, and move it up. So we have 4 in that corner. And then we'll select all of these 4. So select these 4 in the corner, and we'll duplicate it, and we'll put 4 more right up there. Let's go back to object mode, and we'll go back to solid view. So let's make sure that all of these objects in the outliner, we're going to move them into the back cockpit, and then we'll rename them. So we'll rename this one to back instruments, and then I'm eventually going to need to join these together and apply the mirror, and we're going to add some textures. So on this object here, we will apply the mirror. We'll select both these objects and join them, so now they're all the back instruments. And the back panel here, we're going to rename this to back instruments panel. So let's now go out of local view so we can see all the objects again. And we now have a lot more details there on the front. Now I do just want to add a couple more knobs or dials. So if we go into edit mode, we're going to select an entire loop, and we'll duplicate it and move it down and scale it way down. Let's bring it in, and then we can extrude that out, and then we will extrude it, scale it way down, and then fill a face there. And then again, we'll use the shade auto smooth. So we'll select this entire piece that we made. Let's scale it down, and we're going to stick it kind of right in there. So just stick it there, bring it back a little bit. This is like a knob to adjust some things, and we'll duplicate this again, move it down here, make it a lot smaller, and we'll just stick it right there. So again, another knob to like adjust this instrument. So let's now model the seat. So for the seat, we are going to add a new cube, and we'll bring this cube over, go into edit mode and scale it down a bit. Let's zoom into the cube. Let's flatten it way down on the y-axis, and in object mode, we're going to drag it back. And let's bring it up a little bit and stick it right back there. We'll go into edit mode. We're going to select one side. So select this face, bring it over. We can delete those faces. And then we're going to add a mirror modifier. Let's go to the edge select or the vertex select and select the vertices. We'll turn on the clipping on the mirror and then stick it there into the mirror. And then if we select everything, we can just bring it out a bit. So let's now go into local view so that we can model this a little bit more easily. So let's go to side view. We'll go into edit mode. Let's go into wireframe. We're going to box select this piece here, and we'll extrude it down just a little bit and then extrude it down again like this. We'll now box select this entire side, and we're going to extrude it way out like that. we're going to add another loop cut right here, and we can use that to select this piece and extrude that down. And we'll bring that over so you can see the basic chair shape. Let's maybe bring this part up as well a little bit. We're going to add some loop cuts, so let's add a few loop cuts, and then if we box select these loop cuts, we'll bring them out. Box select these loop cuts and bring them out just a little bit so it's a little bit round there. Alright, so now let's add a subdivision surface and we're going to shade it smooth. And in edit mode, we're going to add a few loop cuts to sharpen up the bottom, so add 2 loop cuts there. We're also going to add another loop cut right over there to sharpen that up. And then we'll just add a couple more loop cuts right there to add more geometry. Now right here on the top, I want this to round over. So if we go to front view, we'll go to wireframe. We can box select these pieces and move it down. We'll deselect this part, bring it down, deselect these vertices, bring it down, deselect these vertices, bring it down, and just make it kind of round over. Also, if I go to side view and go into edit mode, I think I'm going to box select the back and bring it back a little bit, just like that, so it's a little bit more thin. So let's go out of local view. We can just kind of see how this is fitting into the cockpit, so let's bring it forward a little bit. Also, let's bring it in a little bit so it's not quite as long. And then also we will select just the front, so box select the front, and we're going to bring it back a little bit. And we'll rename this object to back seat. And just make sure that the back seat here is in the back cockpit. So let's now model the straps on the seat. So for this, we are going to add a plane, bring the plane over, and in edit mode, we'll scale the plane way down. And let's zoom into the plane and we'll bring the plane up and we'll bring it over here. Let's go into edit mode and bring it over to this side, and then we're going to add a mirror modifier. So we'll add a mirror so it's over on the other side. We'll make it a little bit thinner. And then as well as that, let's also add a solidify modifier so it has some thickness. And we'll just drag this thickness value down. So now we're just going to model the strap. So we're going to go to the edge select and select this edge. We can just extrude the edge back, bring it down, extrude it again, and then extrude it all the way down here. We can then select this edge and bring it back, and we can just kind of manually extrude these edges here and just kind of make the straps kind of going down, resting on the seat. And I think it would be easier to select the straps and the seat and go into local view to get the other objects out of the way. So let's now just kind of extrude this down here, extrude this down here. We can kind of have it like hanging out a little bit. So maybe bring these forward a little bit and then just kind of have it rotate over and just have it resting on the seat. Let's go to top view, and I think I want to scale everything down so it's a little bit thinner. And then let's rotate this edge and extrude it and just bring it in like that. Let's now add a subdivision surface with 2 levels. So make sure the subsurface levels are set to 2, and we're just going to shade it smooth. And then we'll go into edit mode and we're going to add a few loops here, one on this edge and also one on that edge to sharpen that up. So now what I want to do is model a little buckle here, which can be used to tighten it. So let's go to the add menu and add a cube. Let's bring the cube over. We'll go into edit mode. We'll scale it down and bring it over here to this side. We'll bring it up, and we're going to add a mirror modifier. And let's scale it in just like that on the y-axis, scale it down, and let's bring it right over here. And we're just going to scale it to the size that we need, so just make it just big enough. And we'll scale this in a bit. So let's now bring it forward a little bit so we can see it better. And then we're going to add 2 loop cuts. We're going to scale the loop cuts up, and then we're going to add another loop cut right here. Let's now select these vertices here, and we're going to bring this out a bit like that. Let's also select these vertices here and bring that out a little bit. And maybe squish everything down, scale everything on the y-axis so it's not quite as thick. So let's now add a loop cut here in the center. And then we'll go to side view, we'll go to wireframe, and we're going to box select these vertices here, and we'll extrude them and bring them out, and then extrude them and rotate them, and extrude them and rotate them down all the way like that. Then we're going to box select this piece and we'll extrude this out, and then we'll extrude it out again. And let's navigate right over here to the side. We'll go back to solid view, and it looks like we need to recalculate normals. Then let's add a few loop cuts right here in the center. So add like 3 loop cuts. And now if we go to the face select, we can select these faces, and we'll bring the faces down and select these faces and bring them down. And then if we go to the edge select, we'll select this edge and bring that down. So it's nice and round there. Now we also need to connect these up here. So let's go to the vertex select. Let's go to orthographic view so we can zoom in closer. And we're also going to add some loop cuts here. So add 3 loop cuts. And now we can just merge these together. So if we select these 4, we'll fill a face there. And then select these and we'll just fill a face there. And just continue to fill these faces all the way to the end. Now we can select all of these faces here, going all the way down, just like that, and then we can fill a face there. Now let's also add a cut here. So we'll just cut that all the way over. We'll add another cut all the way over here, and we'll add another cut all the way over there. So now what I want to do is select these faces, and we're just going to delete the faces, and then we'll select these faces here and delete the faces. So we have a hole there, and then if we select these faces on the inside, we also can delete those faces. And also we'll select these faces here, and we'll delete those faces. So let's now go to the vertex select, and we're going to select these vertices and fill it there, and then we'll fill a face there, and then just continue to fill the faces all the way around, just like that. So we now have that nice big hole there in the middle. So we'll go back into edit mode, and we're going to go to the face select. We'll select one of these faces. We'll extrude it down. We're going to duplicate this face, bring it down here, and we can extrude it out. And then if we select this entire thing, we'll scale it up so it's longer. Let's recalculate the normals, and we're going to move it into the center and scale it up just like that. And this is where like that nylon strip is going to weave through. So let's scale it up just like that, and maybe scale the entire thing up and squish it down a little bit. So now let's just use the shade auto smooth. And you can see right here, the shade auto smooth didn't quite work in this spot. So let's just change the shade auto smooth angle to maybe like a 32, and that looks a lot better. So let's now drag this piece right back in here, and in edit mode, we can kind of rotate it a little bit and bring it out like that. So now we're going to select the nylon strap, and we'll go into edit mode. Let's go into wireframe, and we're going to box select this loop here, and let's bring this loop up. Then we're going to add a loop cut, and we're going to add a loop cut there, and we're going to drag this back. So it's going to start behind the metal piece, then it's going to come up here. Let's drag this up here. We'll add another loop cut. So we'll add a loop cut right there, and we'll edge slide it and drag it forward. Then we'll add another loop cut, and it's going to go all the way to the back. So it's just going to round over and then go back. And let's also bring this up right there, and then we'll add another loop cut and bring this back as well. And then you can see that it's not quite long enough. So if we go into edit mode of the metal piece, we can just scale it up so it's a little bit longer and put it there right in the middle. So it goes through, and then it goes down and comes out on the back. Now I also want to create another little nylon piece coming out here. So if we go back into edit mode, select this piece, we'll duplicate it, and we'll extrude it out, and we'll rotate it, and then we'll extrude it again. Let's bring it forward a little bit, and then we'll extrude again just a little bit to sharpen that up. We'll also add a loop cut right here to sharpen that up. And then in object mode, we're going to shade it smooth. Back in edit mode, let's select this entire piece, and we can bring it up here. Let's rotate it, and we're going to stick it right here, and just kind of connect it up there. So now it looks like we have this other strap that we can tug to tighten the entire thing, to tighten it around the shoulders. So it's basically like these shoulder straps. Now zooming out here, I can see that the straps look way too big. So if we select both objects, we'll scale these objects way down. And then in edit mode, let's bring them over. And we just need to fix the size here. So just kind of replace that and put it in the correct spot. We'll just box select the front here, and we'll just bring that forward. And then we just need to select this here, drag it down. Let's select all these vertices, drag that over, and just fix the placement. We'll do the same thing for the back here. So select the back and bring it down like that. Select the side, and we're going to bring that up a little bit. So it's just resting there on the seat. Now I also want to have it wobble a little bit. So we're going to add a few more loop cuts, and we're going to bring this up and then add another loop cut. We'll bring this one up, and this one's going to come out a little bit. We'll add another loop cut, and this one's going to go back in a little bit, just so it kind of wobbles around a little bit, so it looks a little bit more natural. Let's do the same thing down here. So we'll add another loop cut here and another loop cut here. We can select the middle loop and kind of move it out like that, so it kind of just wobbles around a little bit. This here, let's just bring that back in a little bit. And if we select the entire thing here, select it in wireframe, we're going to bring it down and just have it rest there on the bottom of the seat and bring it back. Let's also add a few more loop cuts here and pull this back here, select this and bring it back as well. Also right here at the very end, we need to add another loop cut to sharpen up the end of the nylon strip. So I now want to model a buckle, so we are going to hide everything. So let's go out of local view and then just hide all the objects. And we're now going to add a new object, so we'll center the 3D cursor. We're going to add a cube. Let's zoom into the cube, scale it way down, and apply the scale, and zoom into it again. We'll go to top view, go into edit mode, and we're going to scale it out a bit, and we're going to scale it out on the x-axis, and we'll scale it flat. Then we'll also scale it down so it's much more flat, just like that. Now let's also go to the face select and select both the top and bottom faces. We're going to inset these faces, and then we're going to delete the faces. If we go to the vertex select, we'll select these vertices and fill it. Select these vertices, fill that, and then just hit the F key and fill those faces. So let's now add some loop cuts. So we're going to add 2 loop cuts right here and scale the loops out just like that. And then we're going to go to the face select and we're going to select the face and go to top view. We're going to extrude it out and extrude it and scale it down along the X, extrude out again, scale along the X, and just bring that right down there. And then we'll extrude this out really far, and then we'll select this face. We'll select the bottom face as well. We'll inset these faces. We're going to delete the faces. Then if we go to the vertex select, we will fill those vertices. We will fill a face there, and then just hit the F key and fill it all the way around. And then let's also add a bevel modifier. Let's turn the segments to 3, turn the amount down, and then just drag the amount up so we just have a very small bevel, and we'll shade it smooth. And then let's also add the weight to normal to make it look more flat. So let's now unhide all the objects, and we can take this little buckle and let's move it over here. We'll go to top view, we'll scale it down. Let's bring it over here and rotate it over. Stick it here and make it the correct size and just stick it at the very end of that nylon strip. We also need to apply the scale, and then because I applied the scale, I need to change the bevel amount, so make that a bit smaller. Now let's add a mirror modifier, and on the mirror modifier settings, we'll choose the mirror object, and we want to choose the airplane body. So that's the very center, so now it's mirrored over. Let's go to the nylon strip and go into edit mode, and let's select both of these and drag them back a little bit. We're going to select this loop at the very end. Let's bring it up and bring it over and extrude it, and then we're going to extrude it down like that. And I'm going to select some of these and drag them back a little bit so they're not quite as close to each other, so drag that a little bit farther back. So now we're going to be duplicating these objects, and we're going to make a lap strap. So we'll select the object, duplicate it, and we'll rotate it over. We'll drag it right back here. We'll select the nylon strap and duplicate it and move it over. And we'll go into edit mode and move it over here. And what we want to do is delete most of it because we don't need most of it. So we're going to box select the bottom, and we're going to box select the top and delete the vertices. So we just have this pot in the center. So let's rotate it by 90 degrees. We'll do -90, and we're going to rotate it along the y-axis by 90 degrees, and we'll drag it right down here so it's resting there on the seat. We'll bring it over, and then we'll drag this object forward, and we're going to take this metal piece and we'll duplicate it, and we'll bring it down, and then in edit mode we're going to rotate it by -90 on the z-axis. We're also going to rotate it on the y-axis by 90, and we're going to bring it right over here, rotate it up slightly, and just kind of stick it right there on the end. And then we just need to go to top view. Let's select this object in edit mode and kind of move it over. And then we want to select the nylon strap, and in edit mode in wireframe, we're going to box select it, and we're just going to fit it right there. So just fit it to that strap there. And then we're going to select this piece. Let's drag it back and drag it down, and we'll extrude it down and just extrude it all the way down until you basically can't see it. So just like that. Now this part over here, I want to flatten this, so if we select the entire thing, let's scale it on the z-axis by 0, so it's much more flat, and we'll just put it right down there on the bottom. Go to top view, and we're just going to bring it right in there. Let's now select all of these loops here, and I also want to scale this by 0 to flatten it on the z-axis, and let's just drag it down, and just put it down there on the seat, and then we can extrude this part up, extrude it over, and extrude it down, just like that. And then if we select the clip again, or the buckle, let's just move it into place. So now we're going to create the main piece where all the buckles are going to connect to. So we'll put the 3D cursor right here, and we're going to add a cylinder. We'll turn the vertices to 32 on the cylinder. Now let's scale the cylinder way down and apply the scale. Let's, in edit mode, scale it down on the z-axis to flatten it. And we're going to bring it up on the z-axis. Maybe flatten it down just a little bit more. Now let's drag it a little bit back, like right over there. And we'll go into edit mode, and we're going to go to the face select and select the top face. And we're going to inset the top face and then extrude it down, inset it again and extrude it up, and extrude it and scale it and extrude it and scale it. And then we're going to use the shade auto smooth. Let's add a bevel to this object. So we'll add a bevel, we'll turn the segments up to 3 and then drag the amount down. And actually, because we added a bevel, we can use the shade smooth instead. So we'll turn the bevel to a really small number and then just drag it up slightly like that. Now I want to have some little spots here where the buckles can plug into. So first let's scale the entire thing up a little bit more. I think it should be a little bit bigger. And I now want to create some little holes here for the buckles to plug into. So on this side, we're going to select these 4 here, these 4 faces. We're going to inset the faces, and then we're going to extrude the faces back in. We're going to do the same up here. So select these 4 faces, inset the faces, extrude them back in. We're going to select these 4 faces and we'll inset them and extrude them back in. And then finally, we'll select these 4, inset them again and extrude them back in. Just like that, so now the buckles can clip in there. So now we're going to select one more of the straps and we'll duplicate it. We're going to delete the mirror because we don't want the mirror modifier. And in edit mode, we're going to rotate it over and just stick it right here. And let's go to the vertex select. We're going to delete these vertices here. Let's also select this little piece here. We don't need that, so we're going to delete the vertices. And let's bring the entire thing over. And you might just need to shape it so it fits with the very front of the seat. So maybe select that loop and bring the loop down. And maybe move the entire thing back a little bit. All right, and then if we just box select this entire front piece, let's just select all these. And we're just going to delete them so they're out of the way. And now we can just extrude this forward and just make a nice flat piece. And it's just going to go right there into that piece. Bring it up a little bit more. And then just to add a little bit more variation, we can add some loop cuts here. Now let's just rotate these loops just so it looks like it's kind of randomly was kind of flopped down there on the seat. Let's also go to side view and we can just kind of move some of these up a little bit so they're not perfectly straight or perfectly flat. So we'll bring a few of these loops up. Now these straps over here are the same as these straps. So if I select the strap here, let's apply the mirror. Select this strap here, apply the mirror modifier, we'll select the buckle, and we're also going to apply the buckle mirror. So now all of these objects, we can go into edit mode and we can move these around just to put them in a different position. So we're going to select all the objects and we're going to go into edit mode. So now we're using the multi-object editing and we're just going to select the vertices and let's just rotate this, bring it over, have this one maybe going over here. We can also select this piece and we can kind of rotate it. And we're just going to make this side look a bit different from this side because I don't want it to look the same. I want it to look a bit more random and unique. So let's rotate this over here. Maybe select all of these pieces here and we can kind of rotate this and move it over. Maybe select all these pieces down here on the bottom and we can move it a little bit to this side a little bit. And we'll do the same thing for these. So we're going to select this buckle here. We will apply the mirror. We're going to select the nylon strap. And we will apply the mirror, select the buckle, and apply the mirror. So we'll select all these objects, we'll go into edit mode, we'll go to top view, and we can just select the vertices and just give it a bit of a random rotation, maybe rotate this over a little bit, just make it look a little bit different and unique so that the two sides don't look exactly the same. So that's looking better. All right, so we're now going to be modeling the stick, which is used to control the aircraft. So I'm going to select this object here. And let's go into local mode. So now let's center the 3D cursor and we're going to add a cylinder. And on the cylinder settings, we'll use 32 vertices. So in edit mode, we're going to scale the cylinder way down and scale it up on the Z axis. So it's quite a bit taller. And let's drag the cylinder over here and we will drag the cylinder down. And we're going to stick the cylinder right here in this little spot. And that's going to be used to like connect to the ailerons and the rest of the airplane so that the stick is going to actually move the airplane around. So now I need to model a little spot right up here, which is going to be a grip to control the airplane. So we're going to go to the face select and select the top face. We'll duplicate it, we'll scale it up, and we'll scale it along the y-axis. And we'll stick it right down here. Let's go to side view and we can extrude it and rotate a little bit, extrude it and rotate it. And we're just going to have it kind of curve over like that. And then we can extrude it and start to scale it down and extrude it up and scale it down and just continue to do that so it kind of rounds over on the top. And then right down here on the bottom, we will go to the vertex select and select this loop and we'll add a small bevel there. And then we're going to shade it smooth. Let's actually use shade auto smooth instead. And then we'll go back into edit mode. Let's zoom in here. We're going to add a little loop cut right there. Let's now add a bevel to the loop cut, just with one cut. Then we are going to extrude this, and then we are going to scale it along the normals with Alt-S and just scale that down so we have a little crease there. So we're now going to model a little button here on the end of the stick, but let's go into edit mode, and we are going to add a cylinder. And on the cylinder settings, let's just turn this to like a 14, and we can scale this way down. Let's zoom way into the model. We'll go to orthographic view and I'll zoom in even closer. And if we go to the face select and select the face, we'll just extrude this and scale it and extrude it and scale it so the button is a little bit more smooth. Then if we select the entire thing, let's scale it up on the Z-axis, and then I can just rotate it over and just stick the button right over there on that side. And then we'll use Shade Auto Smooth. Now I do want to add another small detail right down here on the bottom. So in edit mode, I'm going to go to the vertex select and select the bottom vertices. Let's bring it up, and then I can extrude it and scale it, and then we'll extrude it down on the Z-axis. Just like that, so we just have like a little lip there, so it's a little bit thicker. So let's go out of local view and unhide everything. And if we select the stick here, I think the stick is a little bit too big. So let's scale it down and then apply the object scale. Let's now select everything, and we're going to hide everything, and we'll center the 3D cursor, and we're now going to be modeling the pedals. So let's add a new plane. We'll go into edit mode, we'll bring the plane over, and then we can add a mirror modifier. And let's zoom into the plane. So let's scale the plane down and scale it down like this so it's more thin. And then if we select both of these sides of the plane, let's go to side view. And I'm going to extrude this up, kind of extrude up like this, and extrude it up and extrude it up like that. So it kind of curves over. And let's add a solidify modifier. So we'll add solidify. So it has a bit of thickness, and we'll make the solidify a little bit larger, just like that. So let's go to the edge select this edge. We'll go back to side view, and I now want to extrude it and rotate it. And we're going to make a little kind of circular part, and that's going to connect to like a pipe. And we'll just bring that up just like that. So just a little circular piece there. Maybe go into wireframe and just kind of fix it so it's more circular. So let's now go over here to the front, and I'm going to add a loop cut here. We're going to add 2 loop cuts right there in the center. Then let's go to the edge select, and we're going to select these edges right here, these 3 edges, and we're going to bring this out so that it's a bit longer, just like that, so that pedal is a little bit wider. Then let's select these edges, and we're going to bring this edge out as well. And we're going to bring these edges over. And I'm just going to add a few more loop cuts here just to give it a little bit more geometry like that. Maybe add another loop cut right there. So now let's go to the face select. We're going to select these faces here, and we're just going to delete the faces. So we have a hole there. Also, if we go to the edge select and select these edges, let's just bring them down and over a little bit so that hole's a little bit bigger. And then let's also go to the edge select this edge and bring that edge up so it's a little bit more round. So let's now add a subdivision surface with 2 levels, and we'll shade it smooth. And then back in edit mode, we're going to add a loop cut on this edge, and we're also going to add a loop cut on this edge. And let's also add a loop cut here on the top to sharpen up that edge. And then right down here at the very end, let's add a loop cut here to sharpen up that edge. So let's unhide everything, and then we'll scale the pedals down, and we'll bring the pedals back. Let's bring them down a bit more, and then in edit mode, we'll bring them apart like that, and we'll bring the pedals over. And I'm going to place these pedals pretty low, so place them pretty low, maybe scale them down a little bit, and just stick them right down there. In edit mode, bring them over a bit. Now I also want to give the pedals a little bit more room, so if we select the cage object, we'll go into edit mode, we'll go to wireframe, and using the vertex select, we're going to select all these vertices here, and let's just bring it forward a bit. So just bring it forward so that cage is farther, and that way we now have more room for the pedals, so we'll bring the pedals back a little bit, and bring them down, and bring them over. So there we go, we now have the pedals. So now I want to create a cylinder which is going back here, and then it's going to go forward to connect to the airplane so it can actually control the airplane. So let's select the pedals. We'll go into local view of the pedals so we can just see the pedals, and then we're going to add a new cylinder. And on the cylinder settings, let's change this to 32. Let's bring the cylinder down, scale it way down, and apply the scale. And then in edit mode, we're going to bring it over, and we'll rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. And if we go to side view, we'll go to object mode, and we'll bring this over just stick it right there, and we'll go into edit mode, and we're going to box select this and just bring it down a little bit because it's not quite a circle. So let's select the circle again, and in edit mode we can scale it down and then just bring it right down there to fit that circular piece. All right, like that. So now we're going to scale it up, and we're going to stick it here inside the petals, and let's also add a mirror modifier, so it mirrors over to the other side. Now if we select this face here and bring the face back, we'll extrude it and scale it, and then we're going to extrude it out just like that. So we have that little piece there so that it won't slide out of this cylinder. Let's do the same thing here, so bring it back, extrude it and scale it, extrude it over, and then we'll extrude it, scale it back down a little bit, and then extrude this part out here. So now we're going to duplicate this. We're going to rotate this face by 90 degrees. Let's scale it down a little bit. And then also if we select this face here, let's bring it out a bit. So now let's go to wireframe and we'll select that face. And let's go to side view and we're going to extrude this face way out. If we select the entire thing, we'll recalculate the normals. And I want to scale it down so it's a little bit more thin. And then I'll rotate it over and just bring it up. Just like that. So let's now go to wireframe. We're just going to box select the front here. We'll extrude it and rotate it, extrude it and rotate it, and extrude it and rotate it. And then just scale it along the y-axis by 0 and enter to make sure it's flat. And then we're going to extrude this part way out really far. So now let's go out of local view so we can see all the objects again. And so for this object, we already have a mirror. So we're just going to use the shade auto smooth. Now let's select the petal and the cylinder, and in edit mode, we need to bring it in slightly so it's not going through the bed of the ground. Now there's one more piece that I forgot to model, and that is if I zoom right in here where the stick is, the stick can rotate back and forth, but we also want the stick to rotate like this. So I want to model another hinge piece right here. So let's just add a cube. We'll bring the cube over and scale it way down. Let's bring it right down in here, scale it way down, and just stick it here at the very end of where the stick is, and we'll apply the object scale. So now in edit mode, we're going to scale it down so it's flat. Let's bring it up a little bit like that. And we can go into edit mode, let's bring it over to one side, and then we can just add a mirror modifier. And let's go to the face select this face and delete it. And if we select everything, we will turn on clipping and just drag it in there so it connects with the mirror. Let's now select this face and we'll extrude the face out. And then if we select the bottom face here, we'll extrude this down. Then we're going to add a few loop cuts. So let's add like 3 loop cuts here. And we're going to go to the face select these 2 faces and bring them down. And then go to the edge select the middle edge and bring that down. So it's just like a little bit more round. Let's now add a bevel modifier to the object. So add a bevel, turn the segments up to 3. And just turn the amount to a very small value, and then we'll just shade it smooth. And then we're also going to add the weighted normal. So if we select the stick, let's go into edit mode. We're going to go into wireframe, and we're going to box select the bottom of the stick and just bring the bottom of the stick up just like that. So it's going to be connecting to that piece. Now this piece, I'm imagining that it can rotate kind of like this, but it's going to rotate down here. So we just need to make one more cylinder going back and forth. So we'll go into edit mode of this object, select the cylinder, we'll duplicate it, we'll separate it into its own object, and we'll select the new object. We'll go into edit mode and bring it over. We'll rotate it by 90 degrees and we'll extrude it back. And then we'll scale the entire thing down quite a bit smaller, bring it down here and scale it down a lot smaller, and we'll just move it into the center and scale it out so you can see it on either side. And then if we select that loop, we'll fill the face. We'll select that loop and fill the face as well. And then we'll just shade everything. We'll use shade auto smooth. Now you can definitely add lots more details to the cockpit. If you look at reference images of these real World War II airplane cockpits, they have so much detail. They have lots of pipes and little dials and switches and things. So if you want to in your own time, you can model lots more details by looking at reference images of the cockpits. However, if I were to model all those details, it would take many more parts of the tutorial series. It would take a long time. So in your own time, you can definitely model more details if you want to, but I'm just going to end it here. Those are all the details I'm going to add to the cockpit. So before we finish this part, I'm going to duplicate all these objects and put them in the front. So let's first rename all these objects. So let's make sure that all these cockpit objects are here inside the back cockpit collection. And then we already have some of them renamed, but we need to rename some more of them. So let's rename this object. So we'll rename this to back shoulder strap adjusters. And then this here, we're going to rename to back shoulder straps. And then this one here, we're going to rename this one to back shoulder buckles. And then this one here, we're going to rename to back lap buckles. And we'll rename this one to back lap adjusters. And let's also rename this one to center strap. So I'm going to call this one center strap. This cylinder here, I'm going to call back seat strap cylinder, so back seat strap cylinder. And then I'll rename this one to back lap straps. Now we need to rename the other objects, so the pedals here, let's rename this to back pedals. And then we'll rename this object. I'll rename this one to back stick rotation. And this one I'll call back stick rotation joint. And then this here, we'll call it back stick. And then finally, we also need to rename the cylinders here, and we'll rename this one to back pedal pipes. All right, so all the objects are renamed, so we'll just close the back cockpit. So what we can now do is unhide all these other collections. We can see these again, and we'll hit Alt-H to show all the objects. So what we're gonna do is click on this back cockpit here. We're gonna right click, and we're gonna click on Duplicate Collection. And then if we click on the back cockpit, we're gonna rename this to Front Cockpit. So now what we're going to do is hold down the shift key, select the bottom object, and then shift select the top, and it's going to select all of them. So you can see they're all duplicated. So if we go to top view, we'll go into wireframe, and we're just going to move all of the duplicated objects over, and then we'll just drag them back here and just stick them in the very front there of the front cockpit. Just like that, maybe move it a little bit more forward. Just make sure it fits correctly, and that's looking good. And let's go into edit mode of the object. So I still have all the objects selected, and I'm gonna go into edit mode for all of them. So multi-object editing. I'm gonna deselect everything. We'll go to wireframe, and you can see right here we have these pipes which are going too far out. So if we select the pipes, let's go back to solid view, and we're just going to drag the pipes back, and we're just going to stick the pipes there in the engine. And there's a few things we need to fix. So one thing is that you can see this pipe here is going way farther. So this is the back pipe. So we don't actually need the other pipe, which was longer. So see this pipe here, we have this pipe, which is going all the way along both of the cockpits. And then we have this pipe, which we duplicated. So we don't actually need this pipe because we just need one, because this one is covering the entire cockpit. Now also this object here, which has the pedals, you can see that this cylinder is overlapping. So if we select the front pedals and the front pedal cylinders, we'll go into edit mode, and we're just going to drag it slightly forward just like that. So now you can see the cylinder is right next to the other one. So I will just save the project again. And so the modeling is now completely finished. So we have completely finished the modeling of the Boeing-Stearman Model 75. And so that's going to wrap it up for this part of the tutorial series. So thank you so much for watching. So in the next part, we're going to start adding some basic lighting, and we're going to do some of the basic materials. So when the next part is released, it'll be right up there on the end screen, and I'll also have the link in the video description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.